A pleasant good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our forum this afternoon on Parents. Are you ready to start a family? And do you have enough? Brought to you by Mount Alvernia Hospital in collaboration with Aviva. Well, I would like to take this opportunity to wish Happy Diwali to all those who are celebrating. Well, my name is Catherine, your host for this session. Firstly, to all the moms to be who have joined us this afternoon, we'd like to wish a hearty congratulations on your pregnancy. Well, today we are very privileged to have a great lined up of speakers to join us in answering your questions on Parentcraft, mom and child nutrition, and most importantly, preparing yourself to start a family. Well, in a few moments, we will be inviting Rita Francis. She is the Senior Parentcraft and Lactation Counselor, Parentcraft Center at Mount Alvernia Hospital. Jacqueline Lowe, dietitian specializing in maternal and pediatric nutrition from Mount Alvernia Hospital. Don Che, founder of SG Budget Babes. So feel free to drop us any questions in the chat box, and I will ensure that all your questions will be answered. Well, let's firstly meet our two speakers from Mount Alvernia Hospital. So before I invite them, let me give you a bit of background. Jacqueline Lowe is a clinical dietitian at Mount Alvernia Hospital. She obtained her Masters of Nutrition and Dietetics in Perth, Australia in 2014. Prior to joining Mount Alvernia Hospital, she was practicing at SGH for 4 years, and she has a range of experience in cardiology, neurology, gastroenterology, to pediatric and maternal nutrition. During her time here, she has supported the hands-on weaning workshops and antenatal nutrition classes. Well, she's also a mother to a bubbly 2-year-old. So Rita, on the other hand, is a state-registered nurse and a midwife since 1999. She joined Mount Alvernia Hospital Parentcraft Center as a Parentcraft lactation counselor in 2013. She educates and she conducts childbirth education classes for parents to be, with the goal to assist mothers breastfeed successfully and care for their newborns after delivery. Rita has also done webinar for Mount Alvernia Hospital and public talks on the same subjects. Rita is a mother of 3 girls and she breastfed them successfully. So let's welcome Rita and Jacqueline. Hello, Rita and Jacqueline. Thank you so much for giving your time to join us. Yes. So, well, to start the ball rolling, I think we'd like to invite the two of you to talk a little bit about the benefit of pregnant moms for all the moms who are joining us today. So, first of all, the first question that we would like to ask, maybe over to Jacqueline. So, Jacqueline, the first question is, are there any foods that parents or moms should be avoiding during pregnancy? And what about cheese and peanuts and seafood? Are these considered food that are posing any danger during pregnancy?
Yeah. Okay. So with foods to avoid during pregnancy, I'm sure a lot of the moms have already read about things that could be potentially dangerous to the baby. So these would be things like alcohol. Currently, alcohol is not recommended for the pregnancy. Although I do know of moms who do drink, it's basically you're taking a risk. So there's no safe limit of alcohol that should be recommended, unfortunately. So with the other foods that we're looking at, one of them is raw foods. So this would include things like undercooked beef, or half-cooked seafood, for example, as well as raw eggs. So I think what some people tend to forget as well is that raw eggs come in many different forms in our cuisine. So it's not just your soft-boiled eggs in the morning. It can be, for example, in mayonnaise or some salad dressing that might have a bit of raw eggs in it. So with these foods, there is a risk of salmonella and listeriosis, which can be potentially harmful for the baby as well. And with raw fish as well, there is a certain type of bacteria that can be passed onto the baby as well. So with these kinds of foods, definitely we want to be as safe as possible. We try to avoid taking it during pregnancy. Also I think a lot of moms are afraid of taking certain kinds of fish because they hear about the mercury as well. So high mercury fish are actually things like your large predatory fish. So things like shark, swordfish, a larger species of mackerel. So these are the ones that you want to avoid. But your canned tuna, that's fine to take. Most of the canned tunas imported to Singapore are completely fine to take. With regards to the second question, the one about cheese, peanuts, seafood, actually, cheese, peanuts, and seafood are completely fine to take during pregnancy. But with cheese, you just have to make sure that it's not a cheese with a live culture. So, for example, blue cheese that has mold growing through it, or for example, camembert or brie, which has a mold surrounding it. So those would be the cheeses to avoid. But things like your mozzarella, the kind that's on pizza, that's fine to take. Sorry, Catherine, I think your mic is off.
Okay. Sorry. So that was a very detailed explanation. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. And also, I would like to check also on the eggs part. I think a lot of our locals will enjoy eating half-boiled egg. Is it considered some food to avoid that as well?
Yes, during the pregnancy period, half-boiled eggs, soft-boiled eggs, we try to avoid that as much as possible. Hard-boiled eggs or scrambled would be better.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Next question also for Jacqueline is, as a pregnant mom, do you think that they should also control their salt intake?
Okay, this is a question I get asked a lot, especially from my GDM moms. So salt intake generally is not so much of a concern unless you do have like, for example, a higher risk of preeclampsia. So, for example, maybe a family history of high blood pressure, a family history of diabetes as well. Then, yes, I would say you'd probably want to control salt intake. So, taking for example, not too many pickled things, not too many highly salted things, preserved things especially. Those are the things that you'd want to avoid increasing your salt intake. But of course, using things like your soy sauce, oyster sauce inside your cooking, that's still fine. That's still fine.
Okay, and also if the mom is having hyperemesis gravidarum, like severe vomiting, how do they have to ensure their proper nutrition?
Okay, so some mummies, especially within the first trimester, even sometimes in the second trimester, they are constantly throwing up their food, not able to keep anything down. Most often, they will be admitted to hospital for rehydration because they just get so dehydrated. During this time, it can be very difficult to get the proper nutrition for the pregnancy in. I would say that you try to maintain the hydration status. That's the most important thing. So sometimes supplements can really help. So like maternal supplements, whichever brand that you use, or even just regular nutritional supplements in the form of a drink. This is something that can be very useful, especially if you're sipping it very slowly over the day so that you're not getting that bulk volume to make you want to throw up. Other foods that tend to help also with throwing up are things that actually are high in vitamin B6. This is proven to help, especially taken regularly, has proven to curb that sort of nauseating effect. So these are things like oats, pork even, bananas are a great source of vitamin B6.
Okay, that's very interesting. That's very interesting to know that vitamin B's actually really help. Okay, another question will be, how do a pregnant mom prevent GDM?
Oh, okay. This one is a pretty hard question to answer. Unfortunately, there are not many studies to show what you can do to prevent GDM. I guess a couple of them out there would be they've linked maternal diet, especially before you get pregnant or during the very early stages of pregnancy. If you have a very high fat diet or high saturated fat diet, that does somewhat link to higher rates of gestational diabetes as well. But it's important to remember the main risk factors, I think, for gestational diabetes, which is age, as well as being a Chinese race also actually predisposes you to gestational diabetes. And also, if let's say in your previous pregnancies, you did have a larger birth weight baby above 4 kilos, that tends to predict GDM for your subsequent pregnancies. The other thing is also BMI. So if you're a BMI above 30 already, then that does put you at risk of gestational diabetes. So how do you prevent it? Unfortunately, not much evidence out there, but definitely maybe looking into the amount of fat in your current diet. And another thing that is really closely linked to gestational diabetes is exercise. So they did find that prematernal exercise or the first trimester or second trimester, the level of activity did also sort of predict risk of gestational diabetes. So still maintaining some regular exercise in your daily routine would be great.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I think it's really important to still exercise, but not intensive, but also to watch out for the diet to prevent it. But of course, there's no sort of like scientific prevention solutions to it. Yeah. Another question is that if let's say a mom is already diagnosed with GDM, is there anything that they need to watch out for?
Yeah. Okay, so of course, just diabetes and diet come really closely linked, hand in hand. The thing that you want to watch out for, especially when you first get diagnosed and maybe aren't seeing a dietitian yet, a lot of moms tend to cut back really excessively on their diet. They're afraid of that high blood sugar levels, and they know that carbohydrates cause high blood sugar levels. So immediately, their first instinct is to cut down carbohydrates completely, and that's also not a good thing. I also have some moms who are sort of not like, for example, skipping certain meals because they don't want to excessively eat as well. So the things that you need to be watching out for in gestational diabetes, it's more sort of like a very balanced meal plan. You really want to be still eating carbohydrates, just not large amounts. Like, for example, you wouldn't be going for a plate of Hokkien mee followed by washing it down with a Coke, for example. So it's really about that small amount of carbohydrates throughout the day, at least 2 to 3 hours apart. So small frequent meals, in a way, is the key here. If not, then have your main meals. But then also, if you are hungry, especially because if you are towards the later half of the pregnancy, you do get the hunger pangs. Having small snacks in between those meals are still recommended. And then also, yeah, no fasting or intermittent fasting, or cutting out carbohydrates completely. That's still important part of the diet.
I see. Well, that's all the really good advices that you have given us, and I think a lot of us are, really, we should really look into what we are eating, and what we eat is who we are. So, we are going to move on to our next speaker. So I'm gonna say hello to Rita. Hello, Rita. So, Rita, we have some questions for you about labor. So, first question we would like to ask is, how do you recognize when you are in labor? A lot of mom who are first timers, they will be also worried, like, how do I tell if I'm ready for labor? Yeah.
I'm sure, Catherine, labor is the climax of the whole pregnancy, right? Okay, so labor and delivery are stages of pregnancy many women are anxious about. So if you are well informed about the signs of labor, the stages of labor, what are the options of pain relief you have, then you are then physically and emotionally prepared. Then your childbirth could be fulfilling and joyful experience. That's why our title for class 4 is Joyful Labor. Okay, and then the obstetrician and the midwife will work together, and the delivery will be comfortable for you and your baby. We want a safe delivery for you and your baby. Now we look at the signs of labor. We have 3 signs of labor. One is show, one is regular contractions, and the other is a rupture of water bag. Now these 3 doesn't come in a sequence. There's no 1, 2, 3 to 8. Now let's talk about show. Now what is show? Now during pregnancy, the neck of the uterus is well sealed by a mucus plug called mucus plug. And when this mucus plug gets loosened during labor, it dislodges itself. And as it comes along to your vagina, it looks pinkish, reddish, a mucousy plug showing you that you're going into labor. Now, if you ask me, do I need to rush down to hospital if I have a show? You don't need to. It isn't an urgency to come down to hospital. Now wait for other signs to happen and make sure baby is giving you a good kick and moving and all so forth. Now if you're worried that you're having a bit of show, you can also call up your gynae and ask, hey, I'm having a bit of show. Should I rush down to hospital? Now most of the time they'll say, make sure baby is moving and kicking well, wait for other signs to happen. So it isn't an urgency for you to run down to hospital. It may take a day or the next few days for you to go into labor and all that. Now let's look at regular contractions. Now if you see contractions, it can come from the back. It gives you a squeeze from the back right out to your tummy. Some women are really sensitive, can even radiate down towards the thighs as well. So what is regular contractions? Now from one contraction to another contraction, the intensity of the pain gets more and more. And from one contraction to another contraction, the frequency is more and is nearer as well. So time your contraction, ladies. If the intensity is more and from one contraction to another contraction is closer, please do come down to the hospital because you need a form of pain relief. And most of the time when you're having regular contractions, it's synchronized together with the opening of the cervix. That means the door down there starts opening as well. Now let's look at rupture of water bag. Now it either comes like a trickle or a sudden gush of water. Now when you have this, take a look at the amniotic fluid color. Now, what colors are the norm colors here? Normally, amniotic fluid color is clearless. Now, if you see a greenish color, it is not a very good sign because babies are distressed in utero and they might have passed motion. Now, the very first motions baby pass motion when they are delivered is called meconium. It's greenish and blackish in color. So when the baby is not too happy inside, they would have passed motion inside and the amniotic fluid looks a bit greenish, so that's not really a good sign. And when your amniotic fluid, back bursts, take note of the time, take note of the color, and please come down to hospital. Now, these are signs of labor, and it doesn't come in a sequence. There's no 1, 2, and 3. You can have a word with the gynae and say these things are happening, and let them advise you what to do, and you can come down to the hospital.
Wow. Wow, that was a lot of information to take, but I'm sure these are the steps that we really need to monitor ourselves, before we check ourselves into the hospital. Yeah, I know that our parents who are listening to us right now, you would have a lot of questions in your head that you'd like to ask. So please feel free to put in our chat box. We'd like to address all these questions in just a while after we have asked some questions with Rita. Okay, so next question for you. So talking about admitting to hospital, I believe there are things that we need to prepare for our admission. So what are there to prepare, Rita?
Okay, so ladies, prepare your personal items at least 2 to 3 weeks or even a month before expected date of delivery. So you don't have to miss out anything. You don't have to panic when you're packing your bags and all that. So probably what you can pack inside your bag will be 4 nighties with front opening. It's easy access for you to breastfeed the baby when you have a front opening. And Mount Alvernia do issue a very nice royal purple gown. It looks nice, and you have an access to breastfeeding. You have the buttons and to access for the breastfeeding as well. So it's easier as well. And breast pads, ladies. So breast pads can be cotton ones, washable ones, or the disposable ones. I have some mothers that have issues with eczema and so forth. So normally I'll recommend them to get those cotton ones. So it's much more breathable and it's washable as well. Because after you have delivered, your milk starts coming and you might leak and all that. So breast pad is useful to pack in. Now, what else you need? You need maternity bras. Now, do go and get your maternity bras, which has no wire, because if there's wired bras, it might constrict on the milk, on the breast milk production as well. Yeah, and plus make sure it is larger than your normal size. If you do notice when you advance in pregnancy, the breast starts getting bigger and fuller. In fact, from second trimester of pregnancy, the milk starts coming in, but the pregnancy hormones are keeping it inside. So once you've delivered, then the lactation hormone kicks in. All right, then what else you need? You need cotton panties. Again, why cotton? Cotton is much more breathable as well. And you need 2 boxes of maternity pads, because as when you have delivered, you'll have menses-like thing called lochia. Yeah, so you'll bleed a little bit, and it's good to have some pads so you can actually apply the maternity pads as well. And in the delivery suite, they'll give you the loop ones, and even in the wards, they give you the loop ones, the string type. Now, some ladies, especially us, we are not too familiar with that loop ones, right? We are more familiar with the adhesive ones, the one with the sticky one, the sanitary pads. So if you want, you can get your own maternity pads or night safe pads for when you start having lochia and so forth. But in the delivery suite, it's useful because when you're lying on the bed, you're sandwiched in between, the pad gets sandwiched in between the thighs, and the loop ones are much more easier. Probably why loop ones in the wards as well, because as the gynae comes along to do a check for you at the perineum at the bottom, it's easier for them to do a check as well. So option is there. So either you use the hospital ones, or you can get your own adhesive maternity pads. Now, what else you need? You need a pair of slippers and toiletries. We do issue you slippers as well, the hotel ones, and basic toiletries. And mommy, if you want to look good after you've delivered, I'm sure all the attention is all the babies, right? Go and get your own facial regime and your facial kit and come, your makeup kit. Yeah, we don't mind. All right.
Wow, that's a very informative and also very useful tips. I hope that our parents, our moms out there are taking down notes already. So back to your first question, I think a lot of our moms here are kind of concerned about, recognizing when it's time for labor. So our question here is, what is the frequency, minutes, like the minutes between each contraction, minutes between each contraction before we have to head down to hospital?
Okay. So, Catherine, everybody's pain threshold is different. And if the pain is intensifying and you do need some form of pain relief, do come down to the hospital. And if you ask for regular contractions, perhaps if it's a second and third time mother, and I'm having a contractions probably about every 45 minutes to an hour, 45 minutes to half an hour, I might as well come down to the hospital, because normally for a second and third time mother who has to deliver, the duration is very fast.
Yes.
So as for a first time mother, perhaps 30 minutes to 15 minutes or even 10 minutes. So I would say a rough gauge of 30 minutes to 15 minutes. Yeah. Okay. But if the pain is getting more and more, I'm sure they're not going to sit down at home and wait for the contraction to get more, because as the labor gets intense, the labor gets more, pain only intensifies. It doesn't get lesser.
Okay. All right. I hope that answered the question. I think as a first-time mom, you tend to get very panicky and nervous. So thanks so much for your advice there. Next question, also related to the first question earlier on, is how do you differentiate Braxton hicks and real contractions?
Okay. Braxton hicks are false contractions. They're actually good in a wise, because they're actually preparing you for a real labor down here. So when Braxton hicks comes along, it comes and then it disappears. It's further apart. It's preparing you for the actual day itself. So that's Braxton hicks. But if the contractions are very regular and you have the urge to pass motion and it's very uncomfortable, especially if the due is not due date yet, and you don't feel good about it, your back is also aching, do give a ring to the doctor and see whether, make sure you don't go into premature labor as well. So that too you need to monitor as well. Yeah.
I hope that answer our questions here. Now, next question is, what happens when you arrive at the delivery suite? What do you expect?
Okay, so once you arrive to the delivery suite, the midwife will orientate you to the rooms, and they will take your temperature, pulse, and pressure, and they will inform the gynae that you are there. So there's direct communication between the midwife and yourself and the obstetrician as well, that you're here and what is happening to you. Did the water bag break? That's the reason you are here, or having a little bit of show or regular contractions. And the midwives are trained to actually palpate on the tummy to find where's the baby's back, where's the baby's bum, where's the baby's head. Yeah, so we're trained to do that. And if there's a need, we also check on how much the cervix has been opened up as well. And they will ask you history, like medical and surgical history, like any high blood pressure, any asthma before, any diabetes, because all these will be taken upon, you see. And is this the first baby, any previous operation before? So all these documents will be asked upon as well. And ladies, if you have a birth plan, means you've already done up a birth plan, it's good to actually give it to your gynae. And once you come down to the delivery suite, to give it to the midwives as well. So at least we know what are your, what do you need during labor and perhaps after delivery as well. So we are well equipped with whatever your concerns and needs are as well. And if you are keen to take any form of pain relief, you can also voice. So it's good to bring the doctor's letter along. So once you go for your checkups during pregnancy, the doctor will issue a doctor's letter and blood investigation. So that is good to bring it along. So to give it to the midwife, at least the care is there and we know what is your needs and everything, and it can be rendered upon. Yeah. And yes, definitely there will be communication between the midwife and the obstetrician and us as well. And a machine will be hooked up as well, which is called a cardiotocograph machine. It monitors the contractions, it monitors the baby's heartbeat as well. And if the gynae calls up and say that they are coming down to see the mother, and before the mother goes into labor, and if the cervix is favorable, then probably a fleet enema will be administered as well. Now, what is this thing? This is actually to pump into the mom's rectum to let her pass motion. So once over there the anus is actually released, then it's easier for the baby head to come down nicely, because these are all nearby organs, uterus and the anus as well. So if the anus is packed with feces, the descent of the head can be delayed. Yeah. So we will do it very gently for you, ladies. So don't worry.
Thank you, thank you. Wow, that's a list of things to expect as well. We have a question related to this. For those of our parents out there who have a doula, do you think is it approved to allow them in the delivery suite?
Not at the moment, I guess, because of the COVID situation and all that, because we want to
Yeah.
minimize people in the room and all that. So definitely not at the moment, unless
see.
further instructions are given. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And next question is, I think it's very concerning for all the first time moms out there. So what are the options that are available for pain relief during labor? And does epidural actually cause side effects? What's your take on this?
Okay, so pain relief can be divided into non-pharmacological and pharmacological as well. So the non-pharmacological ones, you have probably music therapy, meditation, breathing techniques. And for the pharmacological, you can have the anthanox gas. That means 50% oxygen, 50% nitrogen oxide. I'm sure you've heard about it, the laughing gas. Though in all my years, I've never seen anyone laugh with that. The only thing is they get a little bit high, probably dryness of the mouth and a bit of nausea and vomiting. So that's one option. And you have intramuscular pethidine injection as well. Now, intramuscular pethidine injection, the thing about intramuscular pethidine injection, it helps with the relief of pain as well. Now, some ladies, it can last about 4 to 6 hours. Some ladies, if the pain intensifies rather quickly, then perhaps it can only last about an hour for pain relief. The thing about intramuscular pethidine injection, during the later part of labor, the midwives will advise you not to take that injection, because the injection actually passes through placenta and even to the baby. And when the baby is born, the respiration rate of the baby can get a bit lesser. So the midwives will advise you when to take and when not to take, perhaps the later part of the labor. And for epidural, makes you happy, epidural. So what are the things about epidural? The common side effects, I would say, is about shivering, itchiness, and probably nausea and vomiting. Now, when you get nausea and vomiting, there are things to help you. There are anti-vomiting medicine to help you to go to ease that vomiting and nausea as well. Now, epidural can be done lying down or sitting up, and you have to cooperate with the anesthetist so it can actually do the procedure well for you. And when during the epidural, make sure you cooperate with the anesthetist as well. So these are the common side effects of all those pain reliefs you have. Now, if you ask me, I know a very common question is epidural related to backache? I would say no. There isn't any clinical evidence to show that epidural is related to backache, because when you go through pregnancy with a big tummy, a lot of physiological changes, hormonal changes, and the pelvic girdle loosens up a bit for you to go into the childbirth. So that's the reason sometimes we have a little bit of backache here and there, but the epidural isn't the source that actually causes the backache. So proper ergonomics is important after you have delivered, ladies. So I guess it helps you answer the questions with epidural.
Thanks very much. I think a lot of parents, especially moms, for myself as well, like I thought that it's because of epidural. That's why I have lower back pain after childbirth. But now that you answered my questions, it's not really because of epidural. It's really because of the many months of carrying heavy tummies.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, now I would like to throw the questions back to Jacqueline. So Jacqueline, we have some questions coming in from the parents. So parents, please, we encourage you to keep giving us all your questions so we can answer them slowly. Okay, the question that we would like to address about GD, which we mentioned earlier on. One of the mom is asking, will GD be passed on to babies when they are born?
With gestational diabetes, it doesn't get passed on to the babies. Gestational diabetes is pretty much only in the mummies. And something that they do have to consider is that with the diagnosis of gestational diabetes, there is a increased risk of the mums getting type 2 diabetes after they do give birth as well. So that's why it does have to be taken seriously, even with any point of diagnosis. So, for example, there is a 3 point reading when you take your OGTT test. So, that would be the fasting, the 1 hour, and the 2 hours. If at any point in time, any of those readings are a little bit higher, it is considered a confirmed diagnosis of gestational diabetes. With regards to the baby, why this is important and why control is important is because the sugar levels are very high or high on a regular basis, the extra sugars from the mummy's blood goes to the baby as well. So the baby's immature organs and the baby's sugar levels will be at a higher level as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that the baby will have sugar issues coming out, but it also does increase the risk of the child getting diabetes, but much later on in their life.
Okay, thanks for answering that. Okay, next we have also another mom who's asking generally, should expectant moms avoid foods such as cooling foods, basically such as grass jelly, papaya, pineapple, kong kong, etc. Because it's kind of like a belief that it's harmful for the fetus. What's your take on this question?
So with these foods, a lot of them, I think they're more traditional Chinese beliefs. When you put them into whether there's any scientific backing, unfortunately, there isn't with these foods. I think the concern, especially for certain kinds of fruits, especially papaya and pineapple, a lot of mums are concerned about, I think, the risk of miscarrying. I think that's the concern. There are components within these fruits, like enzymes, that actually do contribute to a little bit of contractions, but they're only observed in very, very high amounts. So, for example, if you were to take like a concentrated powder or like a tonic made up of papaya extract or pineapple extract, then maybe I would advise you to avoid those kinds of things. But if you're taking fruit itself, like slices of papaya or slices of pineapple as a fruit after your meals, there's no concern. There's no evidence to show that it's been harmful for the baby.
And we also have mothers who's asking whether having coconut water during the last trimester, how helpful is it towards the labor?
Also another one where there's not very much evidence around it. I think a lot of mums, or at least the belief is that by taking coconut water, your baby will become fairer, your baby will become cleaner, especially coming out of the coming out. Yeah, so with regards to that, unfortunately, that again, there isn't any scientific backing. With coconut water, there are good properties to it, and also it does keep you hydrated, especially if you're not very fond of drinking water, or you just, for some reason, moms just suddenly don't like to drink plain water. It is a good way to get your hydration as well as some electrolytes in. But if you do have gestational diabetes, or if you are at risk of getting high blood sugar levels, then coconut water would be something that contributes to that high sugar level. So that's just something to consider.
Wow. Thank you so much for addressing that. Okay, this other question is for Rita. So, Rita, we have a mom who's asking for moms with scoliosis, will epidural be safe for them?
Okay. So if any back issues and you are keen to go for an epidural, talk to your gynae obstetrician regarding this and see whether they can liaise with you with an anesthetist to have a check and see whether you should be able to take an epidural. For as far as I'm concerned, it shouldn't be a problem unless it's really a very bad scoliosis and everything. But let the anesthetist have a look at you and see what's is it viable for you to have an epidural.
Another question is harvesting colostrum safe or necessary?
Okay, so definitely the mothers wants to once they have delivered they want to do skin to skin and early initiation of breastfeeding and everything. But if something crops up that if they're separated from the baby or the mom is separated from vice versa, And if you have a bit of colostrum there, which you have harvested in a safe manner, and you have put it in the right temperature, probably in the freezer, which can last for 3 months, then it shouldn't be a problem because colostrum is full of good nutrients in it as well. Yeah, you can have a word with your gynae as well that you're going to do it, and let the midwives know that you're actually bringing over some colostrum. Make sure you transport in a cooler box and everything, and it can be done. Yeah.
Right. So more questions is coming up right now. I can ask Jacqueline here. So Jacqueline, how do I know if my baby they are ready to have solid food? You know, as they grow a little older after 6 months.
Yeah, so when we're looking at signs for weaning, we're typically looking at a few things. Probably one of the major ones would be that the baby is able to support themselves when they're sitting up. So the head isn't as floppy. They're able to support their own head, but also their trunk as well. So their main body, they're able to support it up. This is a very key part because it also means that we're reducing the risk of choking as well if they are able to support their body by themselves. Of course, things like the chair that they're sitting on, ensuring that we pad the sides as well to give them that stability also helps. But the main thing would be if they have that muscular control. Another thing would be, of course, interest in the food. I think that's a huge one to see whether they are truly ready for solids as well. That they're looking at the food, they're drooling most of the time, or they're tracking, for example, from mom's spoon to mom's mouth. That interest is key as well to starting solids. And then the other thing is that we're looking at also a slight reduction or disappearance of that tongue extrusion reflex, where the baby is always looking out with their tongue like this. Yeah, so that slowly goes away. And yeah, with the reduction in that also tells us when the baby is ready for solids.
I see. Okay, so back on the topic regarding about the third trimester nutrition. So questions such as, can one actually rely on their iron tablets and multivitamins for nutrition, and whether is folic acid still important in the second and third trimester? Is it still necessary to constantly take the folic acid? Yeah.
Yeah, so with all of these supplements available out there, I think it becomes less necessary for moms to actually get, their vegetables, fruit, whole grains in. I think the vitamins and the things like the extra iron or the extra calcium or the extra omega-3 tablets, they make it a lot easier for the mom to hit those targets. But we can't fully rely on them because food is not just about vitamins. It's not just about, singular items. It's about the whole thing as well. So we're looking at not just enough calcium or enough iron. We're looking at making sure that the mom also has enough energy. The mom also has enough protein, and also with vegetables and fruit, it's not just about the vitamins. There's also things like antioxidants and phytonutrients that also help heal the body after you give birth. So I would say yes, they are useful, but definitely something that you can't rely on solely. So it is important to still try as much as you can to get your nutrients through your foods. With regards to the folic acid is mainly there because within the first trimester anyway, because the neural tube is forming and it significantly reduces neural defects. Past the first trimester, for the second and third trimester, unfortunately, there isn't very much studies to show that it has a very good effect, but it doesn't have a negative effect. Some positive benefits would be the risk of a decreased risk of preeclampsia as well. So there's no harm in actually continuing that folic acid for the second and third trimester.
I see. Thank you so much for addressing that. I have quite a lot of questions coming in, so please continue to post your questions, ladies and gentlemen who's watching us right now. Okay, next question also for Jacqueline. So Jacqueline, there's a topic on the breastfeeding. One of the most important questions that mothers usually asking is, what foods are good actually for breastfeeding moms? Is there any certain food that actually helps you to produce milk?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I think, especially as a new mom, your major concern or your number one priority is giving food to your baby. And if you're not able to produce it, a lot of moms feel quite discouraged with that. So breast milk production is often the number one question that we get. With foods that encourage breast milk production, number one is always fluids, making sure that you're drinking enough water. That's number one. And things that are not going to be dehydrating you out as well. So, moms who are taking alcohol, for example, alcohol does reduce your breast milk production. Um, Other than the fluids to keep your breast milk production up would be things called galactagogues as well. So there are things called galactagogues that actually increase breast milk production. With regards to the amounts, that one, the studies are limited with regards to the effective quantity that gives you that adequate production. So, for example, a lot of mums use lactation cookies, and lactation cookies have certain amounts of, like, for example, oats or brewer's yeast inside to help boost breast milk production. But unfortunately, with cookies, there's always a recipe, right? So whether that amount is inside that individual cookie may be a different story. So you can go for those cookies, but I wouldn't suggest, again, to highly rely on the amount of special ingredients within that cookie itself. You can do it yourself. For example, you can make oats yourself. You can put in brewer's yeast yourself. You can put things like lecithin or flax seeds inside your own cereal, and that may be even more beneficial than taking something that is pre-made.
So another mom is also asking about breastfeeding, like if during breastfeeding you're taking in caffeine, will that be passed on to the baby and the baby can't go to sleep at night or having nightmares?
Yeah, actually, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not sure about the nightmares part, but but caffeine, yes, it does cross over as well. So, being careful about what you drink, even things like tea that contain caffeine, chocolate contains caffeine as well. So trying to be mindful of the amount of caffeine that you're also putting into your body, but also, thinking about yourself as well. So if, let's say, you really need that coffee to stay awake, please go ahead and take that coffee. You probably want to do it at the start of the day, though, not towards night, or at least try to give your baby a good period of time without caffeine.
Okay, I think this question will be for Rita. So one of our mom is asking, which is safer for the baby? Is it GA or spine blocker, C-section, or there's no difference for the baby? Is there any concerns on that?
Okay. That question will be good if you can direct it to you can ask your gynae and obstetrician, which is much more safer. Because
Yes.
if you go for a GA, you're totally asleep and you're not aware of whatever is happening and everything. Now, if it's a C-section with just a spinal or anesthetic down there, you're aware of your surroundings. And I mean, you're not going to have the pain down there, but you can get to see your baby once the baby is born and all that. So it'll be good if you can redirect the question to the gynae. So this is all I have for you at this moment. Yeah.
Sure, sure, sure. Please do that. Yeah. Okay. Another question is, a lot of moms are they're concerned about their sleeping position. So it's advisable to actually sleep on the side, right? But this mom, she says that she's more comfortable to sleep on her back, and she's currently at her second trimester. So, what is your take on this?
Okay, sleeping on the left lateral position, I would say is much more better because it relieves the pressure to the baby and the blood flow and the oxygen to the baby is much more better as well. See whether you can sleep on your back and probably just alter a little bit at the more left lateral. You can get this, the pregnancy pillows that can give you some support for the back. And I know as the pregnancy advances, you have to keep turning here and there just to fit into the right position to sleep. So these pregnancy pillows helps around for you to cuddle, for you to get the right position for you to sleep.
We have time for another 2 to 3 questions. So our next question is also for you, Rita. As you may know that most mothers, they're very concerned about whether their babies are fed enough. When you're breastfeeding, you know whether they have enough milk or whether they're full. So how can a mom tell if their baby is full after breastfeeding?
Okay, baby must appear contented. Yeah. So very important is when you're latching the baby, the latch has to be right. And when you latch the baby, look at your baby. Are you and baby comfortable or not? So, mummies, it's good to hydrate yourself. Just drink enough water to quench your thirst. Get into a comfortable position, and then try to massage your breast first before you latch your baby, and position the baby and bring baby to your breast. Yeah. In fact, breastfeeding is a very beautiful way of bonding with your child. And just bring your baby to the breast and let the baby latch and suck, and watch what the baby is doing, and hear for the audible sounds of swallowing and all that. So it's a more of a rhythmic kind of sucking they have. Initially, they will do rapid sucks, and then they'll go suck, swallow, and pause. So listen to all the audible swallowing, and if you can, release that mittens on their hands, because once you release the mittens on their hands, you can see the hands go all over the breast, and they're giving you a bit of tactile stimulation down there. They're going to massage your breast, and you're going to say, "Mommy, I want a little bit more. Give me some more, mommy." And then once they're done, they'll give you a high five on the breast, mommy. So all these are signs to see whether they are happy, and how to know they are getting something out of it. Make sure there's enough pee and motion. Probably day one urine, day two urine. Look at the number of urine. Look at the color of urine. You see, when we adults have enough fluids in our system, our color of urine is light yellow to white, right? Same for the babies as well. So if you notice bloodish, pinkish, concentrated urine, now these are signs of dehydration. Now motion, perhaps about 2 to 5 motions in a day. From greenish, blackish, it becomes transitional motion from yellowish mustard from day 4 to day 5 onwards. Number of motions is important. Color of motion is important as well. As the child grows bigger, as the baby gets a bit more bigger, then the frequency of motion is not important, but rather than the consistency, I would say. And when you look at the urine, look at the motion, you see the weight as well. Now, the first 1 week, they're allowed to lose about, they are not allowed to lose about 10% of the birth weight for the first 1 week. By day 8 to day 10, they will pick up to the birth weight. Then subsequently, they should be weighing about 200 grams weekly. When they're about 4 to 6 months, they should double the birth weight. 1 year old, triple the birth weight. They should look happy after the breastfeeding. Your mommy is calmer, baby is happier, and active muscle tones in between feeds. Now, these are signs to show that baby is getting enough breast milk. If you can, try to empty one side before offering the other side. Yeah. Demand, supply.
That is very, very good tips, I must say. And so for moms out there who are also concerned that how long do you think you want to recommend them for breastfeeding? Some say 6 months or maybe to a year. What is your take? Yeah.
Okay, WHO and HPB has recommended 6 months to 2 years of age or beyond. Yeah, after 6 months, you have your semi-solid foods, and you can get Jacqueline to give you some tips on how to start on solid foods. So as much as you can, mommy, just enjoy the whole process. So breastfeeding is such a beautiful way of bonding with the child. In fact, child is being bonded with you, and when baby touches you and everything, there's so much of nurturing touch. We humans strive with nurturing touch, right? So a lot of good things happen physiologically and all that. So it's good that you can latch as much as you can. So see what you can do and enjoy the whole parenthood. They grow so fast. Don't miss all the moments.
Yes, I agree with that. And it's a nice bonding session between the mom and the baby as well,
Yeah.
which I think dads don't get that. I'm sorry. See, but yeah,
That's
that can feed the breastfed milk that is frozen, right? That also helps with the
yeah,
bonding
there's so many
session.
things. The support from the husband is so important.
That's
So
right.
yeah, right.
Okay, we have last two more questions coming up before we invite Dawn from Aviva. So our next question for Jacqueline. So Jacqueline, a lot of moms who are first timers, they are still wondering whether confinement food, whether does it help in the healing process of their C-section or their childbirth.
Yeah. So with the confinement process, I think it's also another thing that's more traditional to the Asian population. I think across Asia, we have a lot of different kinds of confinement practices, from the way you clean yourself to our food, to the way mommy is treated, I think. So I think with confinement practices, unfortunately, it's not very well studied within the Western population. So we don't get a lot of English studies on this. But there hasn't been anything negative in terms of the confinement types of foods. There are certain kinds of confinement practices, though, that we know as healthcare professionals may not be so suitable. So, for example, I've heard of maybe grandmothers or mothers who encourage their child to actually have a diet of just red date tea instead of water. And this practice, we know that's definitely not recommended. The mummy during this period in time definitely does need just hydration from water as well, and not always from a flavored substance. Another one that we've heard is also a diet of just meat and organ meats to actually replenish the blood supply, and also heal the liver as well. So we know that during, especially while breastfeeding, and especially after such a big operation or big procedure, you definitely need the vitamins to heal up that wound. And what's a very important vitamin is vitamin C. So vitamin C is going to, excessively help you in terms of healing up that wound that you just had. So this comes from fresh fruit and fresh vegetables as well. And you're not going to be getting that from just a meat diet. So definitely there are practices that are not so safe. But as a whole, having especially from a Chinese confinement diet, having things that help to boost the blood supply, or things to keep you warm, especially things like your ginger, things like your sesame oil, there's no contradiction with that. So you can continue having those types of foods within your diet.
Okay, wow. Thanks so much for such good advice. Okay, another question that I just got here is I keep hearing from older folks that showering is not so ideal, especially during confinement. I think we as Chinese, we get that a lot from our parents and also our folks. So how can we not shower when we want to breastfeed our babies? That is a funny one.
Yeah, maybe not my specialty, but I think I would believe that the not showering part does come from the much olden days, where maybe there was I guess during very cold periods, maybe winter periods as well, that if you shower, you of course you would be very cold and you wouldn't have enough body temperature to keep your baby warm and things like that. So I think a lot of these beliefs definitely stem from something in the past. But if that is the practice, and you would like to carry on with that practice, definitely you want to be safe as well. So using a wet wipe to clean yourself, that would be the best advice if you're not going to be taking a shower.
Thank you so much. I think we'd like to wrap up this session of Q&A with Jacqueline and Rita. By the way, thank you so much to both of you for addressing all these concerning questions from our viewers today. We'd like to move on to our next speaker. By the way, we have right here on screen regarding about our online childbirth education. So we've got class 1 all the way to class 6. These courses are available for you to sign up. All you need to do is to just scan the QR code right there, or go to the website that's given right there for you to log on and get to sign up for our online classes. So mummies and daddies, please do so. Well, dear parents-to-be, if you've been following the session and haven't had some of your questions answered, you can always get in touch with Jacqueline from Nutrition and Dietetics Department at Mount Alvernia Hospital. And also Rita is at the Parentcraft Center at Mount Alvernia Hospital. And if you'd like to know more about all your courses that you can sign up, please scan the QR code right here. Okay, we'd like to move on right now. Dawn will be coming up next. Dawn is commonly known as the... She has been writing on the www.sgbudget babe.com since 2014, with over 15 million reads till date. Wow. And she is the Singapore's top female personal financial influencer. And also, she writes to empower Singaporeans with their personal finances, from cutting expenses, saving money, insurance, CPF hacks, high interest bank accounts, and the best credit cards, investments, and much, much more. Well, Dawn is regularly invited as a guest speaker for leading financial events, and her financial tips have been featured and shared across various news and media outlets, so including the Straits Times, the Channel News Asia, and more. So she has also previously been invited to grill our finance minister on the national budget. So some of you might have probably seen her on TV, on the media, and we're very happy to have her today to speak with us. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Dawn. Hi, Dawn, are you there?
Hi, Catherine. Hi,
Yeah.
everyone. My name is Dawn. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm just gonna go ahead and share my screen. I think this is actually really timely as well because I just gave birth just a few months ago.
Wow.
And it's actually my second kid. So I'll walk you guys through my personal motherhood story as well. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. Hold on a minute.
Sure. And by the way, our audience here, if you have any questions for Dawn, please type it into the chat box. We'll be answering your question after Dawn has presented her presentation. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so let's get started. So today I thought it would be really good to share some financial tips. That was what I was invited here for. I'm not too sure how many of you guys are new parents, or maybe you're like a second time parent, or even a third time parent. Like I'm second time, or even third time, fourth time. So regardless of how many kids you have, I'm sure you all agree that at each stage when you actually add on a new child to your family, which is adding on a new dependent, someone who's fully reliant on you, there's going to be some financial considerations that you have to make. And we also know that expenses rise when you have kids. So how can we best navigate this moving forward? So that's going to be what I'll be sharing with you guys today. And before I get started, I thought I'll just do a quick introduction. So those of you who don't know me, I'm Dawn and I write at sgbudgetbabe.com. I also am a mom of 2 kids. So the top row actually shows my elder boy, who is currently 3 years old right now. And you can see his progression from a baby until, at the bottom right-hand corner, you can see his grouchy face. And that's because we welcome a new family member, which is his younger brother. And he wasn't too happy about it, sibling rivalry, and he got jealous, right? And he was like, "Oh, I have to split my attention and love." And it's only in recent weeks that he started to accept and dote on his little brother a little bit more. So if you have issues like that, or if you're expecting your second or third kid, don't worry, this is perfectly normal, and I can assure you that it will pass, because I also kept wondering, what if it doesn't pass, right? But it did. All right. So that's my story. And let me just walk you through when I actually first got pregnant. So that was back in 2018. And the first question I actually asked myself is my own coverage actually enough? And what I meant was that, before I got pregnant, right, I had all my insurance already sorted out. But then with the fact that we were welcoming a new dependent to our family, I realized that my own coverage as well as that of my husband may no longer be sufficient. And it could just take one single financial event to really just wipe off our whole savings or even land us into debt. And that wasn't something that I wanted, because I saw how my parents struggled with debt as I was growing up as a kid. So I wanted to make sure that we were well prepared to prevent that from happening as much as possible. So it also was, I felt that stress even more because we're part of the sandwich generation now, right? And the thing is that, when you are being squashed between, on top, they have this really good graphic here, which I thought was super apt. Like, you have to take care of your elderly parents as well as your younger kids, your young kids who are growing up and who fully rely on you for everything. It can be really hard to straddle between both, right? And that's where our finances start to get a big strain, because the beginning, we were only giving allowances to our parents, but then with a kid, it's like all of the expenses is on us, but yet we still have to give allowance to our parents. And then for some of us, our income may or may not have risen as fast as our expenses did. So therein like was actually the bigger problem. How can I best navigate this moving forward? So what I did personally was that I re-looked at my term life, and I felt that my life insurance was insufficient. Because you see, when I actually planned for my insurance in the beginning, I made sure that if anything would happen to me, right, there would be at least a sum of money for my parents since they were close to retirement age. As for my spouse, I felt that, well, he can always go and work, so I wasn't too worried about him. And then when we got married, I realized that, hey, I have to also think about my parents-in-laws, right, because we're also helping to support them. So I increased my term life. So with a new child, you see, if I'm no longer around to actually earn income for the family, the impact would be even worse. And I actually don't think my husband would be able to earn enough for everyone. Or even if he does, it will be very stressful for him because he'll have to make sure that someone else then is taking care of everything else that needs to be managed, like the household, the children, so on and so forth. So what I did was I actually increased my life insurance coverage to make sure that there would be enough to be spread out among all these different people, right? So my two parents and then my two in-laws, as well as my one kid, and then a little bit for my spouse. And then after that, when I had my second kid, I had to increase this again because it was another kid. Right. So as for the detailed calculations, you may want to go through different simulation models to figure out how much exactly you want to add on. But if you're always not too sure, you can also speak to a licensed financial advisor and then get them to calculate for you. So the other thing I also looked at was on my critical illness. So the reason why is because, like, if I were to contract a CI ever one day, touch wood, okay, but in the event of anything unfortunate, then the person may not be able to work. And if you're not able to work, then there's no income, right? So I use the example of my friend who actually got cancer. And it was actually really shocking for us because he's in his early 30s, so he's young, he's very healthy, he works out very often, he eats fairly clean, just the occasional indulgence, and he doesn't smoke or drink much alcohol either. So when he actually got diagnosed with cancer, it was a shock, and it was actually quite bad to the extent whereby when he was actually undergoing chemotherapy treatment, he had to stop work because going out and being with colleagues and everything meant that he could get sick. And since his immune system was already being compromised because of the cancer treatments, then it would be even more detrimental to him than, say, if you get a normal flu as a normal person. So he had to stop work completely during that period, and I think it took about 6 months, and then another 3 months of just because they're a bit more kiasu. So it took him about 9 months later, close to a year before he went back to work. But the thing is, when that happens, can you actually call your bank and say, hi, can you pause my mortgage payments because I can't work now, I have CI and I need to go and recuperate? No, right? Can you maybe call up your child's preschool and say, sorry, I can't pay the preschool fees for the next 5 months because I need to go and recover, I'm not going to be drawing income? Again, no. So the bills will continue to be there, but your income may be severely affected. And even if you have savings, the question remains whether your savings will be enough. Okay, so it really is pretty important. And thankfully for my friend, he did have insurance. So after seeing his situation and how insurance actually helped him, because it gave him a sum of money that was able to pay off all of his bills and also give him access to a different type of drug, because the standard drugs that were being prescribed to him wasn't working so well on his body. So he was able to try a little bit more experimental treatment, and thankful to say he actually recovered. So it was a very big eye-opening experience, and I realized, hey, I need to also increase my critical illness coverage. Now I'm gonna pause here for a moment, and in case you all think that this is I'm like trying to sell you guys insurance, let me just caveat here that I am not an insurance advisor, and I do not earn anything whether or not you go and buy any kind of policies out there. Okay, so even if this talk makes you want to buy insurance, I don't earn a single cent, so I have absolutely zero financial motivation to basically get you to get insured. But the reason why I'm such a big advocate of insurance, and I constantly talk about it on my socials, even as I talk about how to grow your wealth through investments and all the other stuff, okay, I also place emphasis on insurance because it is so important. You see, when you don't see situations enough, then it's easy for us to think, hey, why not I just save that premiums and I can always reinvest it and earn more money. This is a cost to me. I want to reduce my cost. But that's actually a very short-term thinking, because all it takes is really just one unexpected financial incident to wipe out everything. And I've seen that happen to enough people. So I don't want to take my chances, because it is very emotionally, mentally, and financially stressful to be in that kind of situation. So what kind of parent would you then be able to be for your children if you're constantly stressed out about your finances to such an extent, right? So I didn't want that, and that's why I personally did this for my own coverage as well as my husband. Now, on top of that, what I also did to prepare was, after we realized that we were pregnant, we spoke to both our parents on both sides to make sure that they were already covered by hospital insurance. So at that point in time, my in-laws was not covered because, Asian thinking, for some of the older generation, they're a bit more superstitious. So my in-laws felt that, hey, if I get insurance, right, then I'm gonna get hospitalized. It's like, bad luck. And I explained to them, but if you don't do it, you're actually passing the burden to us, because in the first place, your savings wouldn't even be able to pay for it. And after talking to them, trying to convince them for so long, it was only after I got pregnant that they finally realized the impact it would have on us. And I basically just say, are you sure that you want us to use money that would be for your grandchildren to pay for your hospital bills in the event of anything unfortunate? So that prompted them to get hospital insurance, which I'm really thankful for. And after that, on our own end, okay, once the both sides are parents, so the top sandwich is covered, then what we did was that my husband and I added on more life and critical illness cover, as I mentioned, and I also got maternity insurance for myself. Now, I'm very lucky to be in a situation where on both cases, I didn't end up having to claim, because thankfully my children were healthy. But I came actually really close to claiming it this time round, because with my second child, I had to be induced for labor, as my blood pressure was shooting up and it wasn't coming down. So my doctor suspected preeclampsia, but thankfully after running a few more tests, and it turned out it wasn't. But my child nearly ended up, in a very dangerous situation. And he even came out with the cord around his neck 3 times, like it was triple cord. My doctor said, like, wow, we were really lucky. He was very calm. So we were really lucky that everything went well, and we didn't have to claim. But I do have friends, even within my social circles, right? So I'm not talking about readers, right? These are real friends who have had incidents where they had to claim from their maternity insurance. One of them, for example, I remember she, I can't remember what was the condition she had, but she basically was hospitalized from week 34 onwards. So she was away from her firstborn for several weeks, all the way until she gave birth. And in the hospital, they were injecting her with different kind of drugs to try and make the baby grow and strengthen the lungs before the baby would be taken out, because basically having the baby inside the mom was a danger to the mom's life as well. And in the end, everything turned out well, but it was a very, very scary experience, and she managed to claim from her maternity insurance from it as well. Okay, so you may want to also look at that. That's what I did for myself. Now, as for the child, a lot of people always ask me, hey Dawn, there's so many insurance plans out there. If I have a very tight budget, what do you think I should prioritize? So I just share what I did, right? Because all of us have a budget. And in our case, we felt that for our children, we needed to have hospitalization insurance as a die must have, okay? And then we also added on CI, and I'll explain why later, as well as accident plan. So let me run through with you my rationale for why we did this. Okay, but before that, here's some 2 cute pictures of my children so that the content is not that dry. Okay, my older kid on the left obviously doesn't look like that now. I really miss him at this age. So okay, moving on. All right, so for hospitalization, right? Let me share with you guys something really important. The thing is that when you have actually given birth, the government does give us MediSave as well as MediShield Life. But most of us as kanchong parents, right, I tell you, when something happens, it is quite likely you may rush straight away to the private hospital, because you don't want to wait. And with a baby, especially if you're a first-time mom, you have no idea if that condition is serious or trivial. Okay, as you have more kids, you'll get a bit more experience. But if it's the first time you're encountering it, you would definitely freak out. So if that's the case, right, many parents do end up heading straight to private hospital instead of a public one. And in this case, I just wanted to share the case of my friend, whereby he didn't get a hospital plan because they got so caught up with becoming parents and preparing for the baby's arrival that they completely forgot about the insurance. And what happened was that their baby got hospitalized, and they had to pay a $4,200 bill. Now, this $4,200 could have paid for several years of hospitalization premiums, right? So it was actually very wasted, and you can always Google this title. He wrote a blog article on it, so you can Google and read about his experience if you want to understand why a hospitalization plan for your child is so important. Now, on top of that, I wanted to share with you guys something that not a lot of people know, which is that when your baby is actually born, there is this first 14 days of their life where you cannot get insurance for them. Okay, so basically, it is a requirement apparently among all the different insurers. And as a result, what we did was that I actually figured out what insurance we wanted to have before we even gave birth. And then I told my agent, hey, this is my EDD. Please follow my anyway, you are our online on our social media friend Facebook. So when our kid is born, please remind us after 14 days and check in with us so that we remember to get our insurance stuff managed done with you guys. So having someone to actually remind us was very helpful. Okay, but then I think for my second kid, I had to wait a bit longer because of his jaundice level. So you do have to wait for the 14 days to pass as well, the jaundice levels to go down, and then the moment you can get insured, quickly go and do it, because with a kid you really don't know what could happen. And as for accident plan, okay, so I had readers telling me, my child is actually still very young, he's a baby. Why not I wait until he's a bit older and can start running around, and then maybe you get accident, like fall down, then I go and get accident plan. I can save on a few years of premium. Okay, not wrong to thinking, but I explain why I didn't buy into it. The reason is very simple, because right, your kid can actually get a lot of different conditions, right? Even a mosquito bite, which has dengue fever, especially your estate, that you have the sign saying how many dengue cases, and then your government and town council keeps telling you, please go and clean up, don't leave stagnant water around, okay? If your kid actually gets dengue fever, did you know you can actually claim from your personal accident plan? Okay, on top of that, if your kid falls down, okay, or rolls off the bed, okay, that could also be another claim scenario. And then if your child has gone to school, it is very likely that they may get hand-foot-mouth disease, or even stuff like chickenpox and other stuff. Okay, so my friend's children did get hand-foot-mouth disease recently as well. So I reminded him, hey, you got accident plan, right? Remember to claim. It's one of the claimable conditions. So this is actually very common among children, and the likelihood that you'll be claiming from your plan, right, is so much higher than you trying to save that premium. You will probably have to spend that money anyway in the form of some doctor fees. Okay, so to me, I felt like just that small amount didn't really amount to too much compared to the other type, and I just signed up straight for the accident plan. Now, as for critical illness, this was where I was a bit more hesitant, because it was a little bit more expensive than the other plans. Okay, and if I were to combine all three, I was like, wow, that's actually a little bit more than what I expected. But I spoke to more parents, and this is actually my friend Audrey. Some of you might know of her because she's also quite prominent in the social media scene, and her eldest girl actually got cancer. Okay, so what happened was that it was completely unexpected. And thankfully, okay, with insurance, you can actually get claim. Now, then some other people will ask me, but what's the point of getting insurance for CI for my kid? Okay, and the reason is this, very simple. There are two main schools of thought. The first one is the bills you really don't know, because if your kid is hospitalized, then yes, you can claim from the hospitalization plan. But with cancer and many other CI conditions, right, there are things that may not always require treatment in the hospital. So then you may not always be able to claim it from your IP plan. So the other thing is also, as a parent, if your child is sick and really needs you to be by their side, okay, and they go through all these treatments, they're feeling unwell, they're calling mommy or daddy, and they're crying, would you want to be there for them, or go and work and keep worrying about them as you work? So my line of thinking was that if my kid really needs me, I want to be there for them. And with CI, right, with the payout, it will enable me to stop working for a while and still have enough income to basically pay off the bills and whatever needs to be paid because of the payout. So that's why we got a CI plan as well. Okay, now on top of the insurance, so we always see insurance as what are the biggest financial risks that you want to outsource to someone else. But other than that, I think it can also be useful when you think about costs moving forward. And as a parent, we really do need to think about, hey, what are the biggest costs that we need to save up for? So this is actually some statistics from DBS, whereby they project that the fees for your different courses and universities are going to add up to this level. Okay, so it's not very cheap. And here's my biggest tip to you guys. Okay, sorry, I think I missed out one more. Okay, my biggest tip for you guys is that when there are big ticket items, start saving for them early. Okay, now you can start saving towards your child's education, which is probably going to be the biggest big ticket item you need to finance for them. Okay, and you can do this through two methods. If you do not really know how to invest, then a good way would be to look for an endowment plan so you can focus on your job while letting your money work for you in an endowment plan. Okay, and the percentage rates of endowment plans typically are actually more than inflation, so it should be able to reach to a certain amount. I do have a lot of friends who use endowment plans as a way to finance their kids' education, and in fact, it was the way that my cousin actually managed to go to university. So she's very smart, but unfortunately, she lost her father when she was very young because the father got into an accident, and the mom ended up single-handedly having to bring up her two kids. So the mom was always working. It was a little bit hard for her to manage two by herself as well, right? But thankfully, they actually did have the insurance covered. So when it came to university, right, my cousin was not at all worried because they had the insurance plan that would pay out for university. So that was good. On the other hand, my parents didn't get an endowment plan, and then my dad got burnt in the stock market. And what happened was that I had zero money to go to university. So I had to go and work hard for a scholarship. My sister took up a student loan in the end. And then that's how we finance our university. So it's really up to you, but a lot of people do use endowment plans, and you can also consider that. By starting early, you should be able to get to that goal. The other thing is, if you're a very good investor and you're confident that you can actually invest and not get burnt, okay, so you must be very disciplined, you can manage your portfolio and emotions well, unlike my dad who ended up losing everything unexpectedly, okay? So what you may want to do is that stick with your investment plan, and you can also use that to finance your child's education. So it's really up to you as to where you're better at. If you're someone who's very good at your career at earning income, and you don't really have the brain space left after a whole day of work and playing with your kids to go and think about investment, look at companies, analyze stocks and the financial reports and everything, then you may want to just outsource that to any other types of investments instead. So really look at what works best for you and your family. All right. Okay. Now, what about for yourself? So I think this really hit home to me because I realized, right, the worst part of growing up is that we watch our parents get old. And I was just telling my husband recently, hey, I actually remember my mom when she was around my age. I kind of remember the play dates that she brought me out for, and now I'm doing the same for my kid. But now my parents are so old, and my dad can't even walk by himself anymore. He really needs like a walking aid or someone to hold him. And I realized, right, with my parents, we actually have been very stressed in recent years because as I was getting pregnant and preparing for the arrival of our children, my parents retired and were getting into a lot of financial difficulty. And because they didn't plan so much for their retirement, right, we had to then step in, okay, and basically see how we could figure out their finances for them. And, you know, there's this saying that if you don't plan for yourself, are you actually making your children your retirement plan? So my husband and I discussed this, and we were like looking at what our parents failed to do. And as a result, the stress that we're going through right now, we felt that we didn't want our children to go through the same in 20, 30 years time down the road. So what my husband and I also prioritize is saving and investing towards our retirement so that our children won't be too stressed. Okay, so of course, while we save and invest, we also want to outsource the biggest financial risk because we don't want to like save and invest. And let's say you have $500,000 and then end up you get slapped with like a $200,000 CI bill, so you're only left with $300,000, and that completely derails your retirement plan, right? So we outsource and we spend some budget on our most expensive risk to pass them on to an insurer instead. So I won't go through all of them, but these are some of the most biggest financial risks that we feel were the most expensive to us. Okay, and recently, because the government also launched CareShield Life, that really prompted us, because our belief is that if the government does something right, that means the problem is serious for them enough to make it a mandatory national insurance. So when they launched CareShield Life and I was studying the differences between ElderShield, I realized that, hey, I think this problem is going to get worse in the next few years. That's probably why they launched it, right? And when we look at how much long-term care costs for my dad, because he's starting to need it already, I can tell you that the statistics you see in the media is not even accurate. Okay, I don't know about your experience, maybe because like they account for like subsidies and all that kind of stuff as well. But when I went to check for nursing homes, right, wow, I tell you the cost that was quoted to me was $3,000 to $4,000 a month. Okay, it is actually really expensive. To some people, that might even be more than what they were earning. So other options could be, if you were to go for a helper, you'll be spending on top of, you know, your taxes, her salary, the food allowance, and everything else combined, you'll be probably spending about 1.8K a month. And then on top of that, it'll be maybe about like 8 years. If you need the long-term care for 8 years, that will cost you $180,000. It's not a small sum. And we're also assuming that for these 8 years, your helper don't get a raise in salary and your food prices don't increase, which may or may not hold true, because we have seen already in recent weeks the government is telling us be prepared for inflation, rising food prices, and everything else. Right, so you know, these are very assumptions. I actually think the figure will be even higher. But if you were to go for a nursing home, I'll just be very conservative and use $3,000. Okay, but I'll tell you first, it's not even $3,000 in my case when we were looking for it. So that same $180,000 will now only last you for 5 years. And the question to ask is, will you have that $180,000? Will you be disciplined enough to make sure you leave that untouched until the time when you need long-term care? And then if you need it, right? Do you also then make sure that everything else and your costs and expenses will remain constant so that you can really fulfill it? And then after 5 years, if you go for the nursing care, you're really like, you leave this up. So there's a lot of considerations. And when I had that discussion with my husband, I felt like it wasn't very realistic. So basically, we felt that CareShield Life, which is $612 this year, is not enough at all, and we added on a private CareShield Life supplement. Again, but as for how much to add on, I think you really need to look at the quotes, how much monthly benefits you want, and then really have a detailed discussion with financial advisor to figure out what's better for you. Okay, so in short, you can actually take a screenshot of this if you guys are watching this on your mobile phone or your laptop, and basically these are your different functions that the plans actually work for you, and you can actually consider if that would be useful in your own case. You may not end up needing every one, but really just understand how they work and then what would be best for you. Okay, so I'll leave you with 3 main actionable tips. The first one is, as parents, we want to make sure we have enough for our dependents. The second one is, if you foresee any big ticket items in the future, like your retirement, your kids' university, your need for long-term care when you're much, much older and can no longer do all the daily activities by yourself, then you want to be planning early. If not, it's going to be very hard to finance them the longer you put it off. And the last tip I'll give you is, take care of yourself as parents so that your children won't be financially stressed out. Having gone through that same experience, I know what I don't want to do for my children. So I hope my sharing helped. And just a quick note from our sponsor today. So Aviva invited me here to speak with you guys as well. I'm very thankful for the opportunity. And if you want to speak with a licensed advisor, I would recommend checking out Aviva's policies. They have a lot that are very suitable for families as well. And they have different perks which their advisors can definitely talk to you about. Okay, so if you were to actually leave your details, you can actually scan this QR code or take down this number 92399689 and leave them a WhatsApp so that one of them can actually get in touch with you. So if you were to complete a financial review with Aviva, you can also get a free AutoNet hub worth $108. So you can actually use that when you're traveling around Singapore, or even on a staycation, or when travel opens next time in the future. That will definitely come on in handy. All right, so I hope you guys found this useful, and I'll open it up for questions right now.
Dawn, I like your energy and giving us all the scenarios of what might happen, because, life is unpredictable. And also, I know that you have some giveaways. Maybe we will share that about the QR code later on as well. So I have some questions that are quite concerning here. One of our parent actually asked, how do I know how much to get for the CareShield Life supplement?
Okay, so how much to get? You need to ask yourself two questions. One is how much do you think it will cost for when you get there, and how much can you afford right now? Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think I can share my experience. For us, we felt that we will at least minimally need $2,000 plus. So we can do different projections, lah, okay? But we felt that $2,000 a base, and then of course take some from our savings. If I could, right, I would definitely go for $5,000. But then the budget is actually really much higher, right? So you need to check with your financial advisor and then get quotes for different levels. So let's say, for instance, if you feel $2,000 is also a good range like what I opted for, then look at the quote. Can you actually finance that? If it's too much for your budget right now, then I suggest you prioritize your children and everything else first. As I mentioned, it has to be in a certain order because of the risk. Okay. But if not, you can always opt to do this layering. Right. So just like how you would layer on term life insurance as you go on in life, what you can do is that you can first get a basic cashew life supplement. Let's say, for instance, $1,000 or $2,000, and then as your income rises and you can start to get more, then you can start to add on more monthly benefits.
I see. I see. Okay, so I hope that answered that question from one of our parent right there. Next question is, why didn't you get an endowment plan for your children?
Very good question. So remember I shared a slide whereby I say, depending on whether you're good at investing or you're not and you're better at your career, then you may want to choose between an endowment and investment plan. So in my case, right, if you guys actually follow me on social media, you can find me at SG Budget Babe on Instagram, Facebook, and even my blog. You'll see that I am very, very big on my investments. And I focus on, I don't just manage my own investments, but also that for my spouse. And my returns are actually way higher than what an endowment plan gives me. And it has been actually pretty consistent in the last few years. So I think my track record basically gave us the confidence for us to use investment to create our own endowment plan. Yeah, and I'm very disciplined. I can definitely tell you that. So I don't need a plan to commit myself to saving money. For me, I always save before I even spend. And I am super reluctant to spend on myself. I am more willing to spend on my kids. But because I'm very disciplined that way, right? For me, the investment plan works better than having an endowment. So you have to see your skills. Because I'll give you an example. I spend anywhere between 2 to 4 hours every day studying investment.
I
Yeah, if
see.
you don't
Wow.
you, then maybe you might want to look at whether an endowment plan or any other options would be better for you.
Yeah, I think because traditionally parents would want to get endowment plan as a form of savings for their kids. So thanks for addressing that. Investment plan would be a better option according to your advice. Another question is, my parents, they're very old. Is it too late for them to get a hospitalization insurance for them?
It depends on the underwriters actually. So have a chat with your financial advisor and get one who can try to push for you. So in our case, right, my in-laws were actually really quite old by the time they enrolled, especially for my father-in-law. So what happened was that he needed to go through an extensive health checkup first, and then depending on the result, then they would let us know whether it would be approved or not. So thankfully, he passed it and he managed to get the approval. But it took us quite some time. I think the whole process took about 6 months in total because from reviewing and then sending the application, waiting for underwriter to come back, and then arrange for the health checkup and everything. Yeah, it took a while. So go and try. If you never try, you never know.
Yeah. Okay. So I think also because there's a certain age that they have to hit before it jumps onto the next level of of the price tag, right? So at what age is the most sort of like average price or reasonable price to go for?
Actually, you don't have that because as you grow older, okay, very interestingly, hospitalization plan are the most expensive when you're very young and you're very old. So it's like, as a sandwich generation, you'll be paying a lot for your child's plan as well as your parents' plan. Yeah, I pay for our parents' plan, so I definitely feel that financial pressure. Okay, which was why my husband I downgraded to we were actually on the highest tier. Then we
Yeah.
downgraded to panel specialist instead because we were like, I think we can afford not to have the highest because we need to pay for these two other extreme ends as well. Okay, so there really isn't a best time. The best time really is as soon as you can before any conditions kick in. But for parents, right, you might also be very conscious of the fact that it will really rise a lot. So just to give you an example, last year I paid close to 1,000 on my kids one, and then for my parents, we paid about 1,000 plus, like 1,500 maybe for each of them. So it's really not cheap. Yeah, the good thing is that Medisave can actually deduct some, so that's great. And I'm a huge advocate of topping up Medisave so your interest can grow and help to pay down this premium. But if the budget is too much, you can also consider like going to Plan B, the panel specialists or different tiers, or even at the worst, removing the riders. It will actually increase your risk without the riders, but at least you have a base, right? It's always important to at least have a base and then you slowly build it up.
So there are actually different options that we can choose depending on our budget. That's right.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. Next question is there, okay, for example, if somebody have already gotten their whole life plan, do I still need to add on, additional life insurance coverage or any coverage that you might want to recommend?
Okay, so without knowing how much you have, right, I think it's hard to answer that question because the thing is that when you are actually buying your whole life plan, do you account for the fact that you will have future children? And how many do you factor into the equation? Yeah, I think for most of us, right, if you actually buy a whole life plan in your early 20s when you start working, late 20s when you start working, right, you will probably just think of what you need for yourself at that point in time, or maybe factor in one child. Okay, so if you have more children, you may need to add that on. So what is actually very useful is that if your whole life payout is actually not enough, right, you can layer it with term plans.
Okay, one last question for you. Is early CI coverage really that necessary?
I think increasingly it is because we're starting to diagnose CI much earlier. And it really depends on whether you think you will need to stop work or you want to stop working and focus on your recovery when it is at an earlier stage, like stage 1 or stage 2. Yeah, so if your answer to that is yes, you want to stop work and focus on recovery so to improve your chances, then you might want to get early CI. But if you're the kind of person where you rather like take your risk, okay, and your budget very little anyway, so you are like, I'll just take my risk and hope and pray that nothing will happen to me, then what you can do is you have to be mindful that either you must have enough savings or you do continue to plan to continue working even as you are getting treated.
Thank you so much for answering all these concerning questions that are coming from the floor. I think we've come to our end of our Q&A session for you, Dawn. But of course, I believe some of our parents might have more questions for you. So would you direct them to your social media site like SG Budget Base?
Yes, so you guys can find me you can always chat me up on Instagram. I'm very responsive. You can find me there and send me your questions if there's anything that was unable to address. And then I'm also available on Facebook. You can Facebook message me. So it's just SG Budget Base, Singapore SG. Yeah, so that's my handle.
Thank you so much, Dawn. And your presentation has been very useful, and the tips that you've given has been, very informative. And of course, your presentation was very comprehensive. So we'd like to say a big thank you once again, Dawn, and hopefully, we'll invite you back again soon. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Have a great parenthood journey.
Bye. Okay, now, mommies and daddies, I know that and listening to us, I would like to give a few shout outs here. First of all, is this auto neck hug giveaway. So all you need to do is to complete a financial review with us and get a free auto neck hug. So all you need to do right now is just to scan this QR code right here on the screen, or if you can, just WhatsApp to this number 9239-9689 in order to get a chance, to get hold of this neck hug giveaway. All right, and also we at Mount Alvernia Hospital, we have 6 of these childbirth education classes. They're all done online due to the COVID, so you can actually sign them up. And if you look at the screen, there are actually these 6 different classes. They are nutrition during pregnancy for class 1, managing gestation diabetes class 2. Class 3 is about nutrition and support, confinement and breastfeeding. And also class 4 is joy of birth. Class 5, we're giving you tips on successful breastfeeding. And lastly, class 6 is about care of newborn. So scan this QR code and get to sign up any of these classes, and it will be conducted online. All right. So thank you, everybody, for your time this afternoon. I hope you find this session very informative, and we will also be planning for more of these events for you coming up in the next few months. So please check out our website or our social media page and follow us on this space for more events that are coming up by Aviva and also Mount Alvernia Hospital. Well, in the meantime, we wish you a happy weekend ahead and also have a happy pregnancy and a smooth and safe delivery. All right. So I'd like to sign off. Thank you so much and have a wonderful week. Bye.